Everyone. We are now having a discussion about the minority groups and film and how film can help out with that. So on our panel, we have Mr. Ben Mahaka and Edgar Langeveld. My apologies.
Edgar Langeveld.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to hand it over to them. And if you have questions along the way or after, you can ask them or join into the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm a minority. I'm from a minority group, which is the Ndao tribe. And Edgar is from a minority group, which is?
Khoisan Bushman, original Aborigine.
Okay. All right.
Queens and kings of the desert in Griqualand, often called bastards in Afrikaans, or bastards in German, or bastards in Shona, or bastards in any language. Our group, unlike the Ndao, who are related to my father's mother's people, my Aboriginal origins is the subject of a documentary film I'm making about Southern Africa, the whole of Africa, and linked to thousands of years ago, where we put our hands on the ceilings of Mabako caves to leave proof that we was here. And then we moved on. We also left pictures of people with warriors killing animals and killing people. So we left historical records.
Good.
That's who I'm representing today. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so I think if we just go right into it and find out what are the challenges that your group, your minority group, face as far as communicating and being out in the mainstream.
Mainstream being defined as Western imperial colonialism.
I think mainstream, in our sense, being just being seen by and understood by, people in our cities, people who watch our media, so local television and regional television, and now I guess, international TV, which is becoming more. So in popular culture.
Of the 21st century. Okay, you remember The Gods Must Be Crazy, when a Coca-Cola bottle landed on the Busuman's head and everybody laughed and Peter Dirk Ace made millions of rands. And it was funny, but I think what the Ndao would want to say, or the Bushman would want to say, or any group or minority would want to say is, you wouldn't like it if that Coca-Cola bottle was falling on your head. So it's about pain. And so if encounters are painful, then a Bushman's going to say, or a Bushwoman is going to say, I want to marry that Dutchman and have his children, which is a choice as a woman. Or that Zulu maiden might, in the whole of Southern Africa, the thousands of years we've been intermarrying, the Bushman was made invisible. Their hands were cut off. They were driven into the sea. And it's all wound up with Mfekanes and kingdoms and history, which was erased from one, approval, official, recognition, even at a creative level. We were discouraged not to think like a Bushman, to know what a Bushman is, but don't do it. Don't hunt and gather Zumbani and Tsine and Bora. Let's go to the shops and buy plastic bags of plastic food. So pre-Western or 21st century Western dominant culture, it would be good to see the Bushman once again in the caves, giving you much more authentic information than I can, because I was told not to be a Hottentot as a child by a society.
Actually, that side is totally new to me.
Thank you.
I think for my part, being Ndau has meant really, if you're in Harare, which is where content is mainly created, it's pretty much like an afterthought or the butt of a joke. So, if I think for the longest time, if there was a Ndau person in a film or a drama, it was, for people to laugh at the accent and say, oh, what does that mean? Or, Ndokuno Babaroi and whatnot. And it's been a challenge to even think of going out, gathering the resources that are needed to go out and create something that is authentically Ndau. And when I say authentically Ndau, I mean authentically Ndau in the sense of now, today, not Muchongoyo, the traditional dances. So, to move the way my community is perceived from a relic from the past to being real people from today who face the same challenges that anybody else here in the bigger cities faces. So from a content creation point of view, that's what I felt like I needed to tackle in a way that would engage audiences.
My witness of Ndau culture and masks in particular, as a child, seeing it, resonating in school, in our standard education curricula, my impressionism of masks was that if they're not in the correct context with the right protocols, they can debilitate someone's inner soul. They can explode a person with fright. It's so amazing that it's, maybe the visitors shouldn't see this one. They can see these two, but this one is never seen by visitors. The sacredness of culture within dynamisms of society, like you said, butts of jokes about Ndau, or a bushman getting hit with a Coke bottle, making millions of rands for its creator because it's funny. Schadenfreude, as the Germans say, someone else's pain. We cannot live and survive as human beings in the state of pain. We will drink wine, or we'll go jogging, or we'll take a hot shower, but we don't like to abide in sadness. So these pains of our story, if we're going to own our story, we take responsibility to authenticate it for ourselves and to reinforce it if it's been suppressed by law and by force and by military, where give these Bushmen English and Dutch names, like James and John and Jimmy. Hey, Jimmy, 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 Jimmy. Jimmy has evolved from the 1900s to Keda. Keda, assume I'm a Bushman and with some European blood and some African blood, but basically my stock frame is standard Khoisan Bushman, a bit tall because of the European, but a Bushman. And to be called a half-caste Bushman, a 0.5 Bushman, a 0.5 what? A Hottentot. So when I went to St. George's College in the 1980s, from 1979, ceasefire independence, when I got to school from Arcadia, St. Martin's, as a young golfer lighty, from that side, the south by the railways, where they steal cars and they hit you and they take all your money and your chicks and they gone on motorbikes. Vroom. That stereotype was beaten out of me to say speak in proper Latin, Greek and English and you will do French for A-level. So je parle français. I speak French fluently. I did it for A-level. Passed well, went to University of Zimbabwe, and at 18 was doing first year law. So when I was studying law for 3 years in 1988, 89, 90, I would go to the High Court and Parliament, to the libraries to research cases. And I got sick and tired of being trained to be a lawyer because the cases from 1800, 1850, 1900 from the Cape and Southern Rhodesia and Nyasaland, you get sick of seeing the state versus 3 natives, 2 half-castes, and an unknown bush woman. And there's somewhere in there, there's rape and murder and pillage and burning and lies and injustice. Drove me into arts and culture that let me learn more than just and the rest of our Chinese alphabet. You know, TikTok. That's from the Bushmen. But TikTok. Everybody laughs at it. It's like time is kufamba. Everybody knows TikTok is cartoons. It's comedy, right?
Yeah.
We look for jokes, but we're looking at tragedy, and we're harmonizing in the documentary.
So, okay, so I've known you for years as an actor, as a comedian.
My colleague, my brother, we've worked together for many years. Thank you.
Yes.
And many others.
So, so what I wanted to find out is what, you know, in a practical sense, today or over the past few years, what have you done? What are you doing to redress the issues that you've talked about, that marginalization?
I've been living Kwaseke, Dema, under Chief Materera and Sabukus for 4 years, documenting wildlife in Zimbabwe, kingfisher, eagles, and migrating storks. And I've been taking footage of these and integrating it into the documentary. The story is a journey from 00 to 42. On your ID, I think I brought my ID. On your ID, you have you got 63-75 something, then it comes to times sit M or F, and it's got a...
The one after the letter denotes which part of the country you're from. So I'm 13, which is from Chipinge.
I'm 00.
What's 00? You come from Norway.
Yeah. And
You're
so,
not even Harari.
besides, I'm an alien. I'm a Bushman alien. We've been erased. So the Dutch family that gave the name Langeveld had a horse that died and was buried in Rusape. And if you go to the Pioneer Cemetery in Rusape, grave 93, are some of my ancestors. And this horseshoe is for when the last horse has died. They bury the horse and they ask to be buried near their horse and their dogs. You know, like a king would do, like a pharaoh in Egypt would want to be buried with all his stuff.
So they would have access to it in the afterlife.
And people would say, don't walk there, there's a grave. Go round, the little house belongs to Vazukuru now.
Okay, so I think, you know...
So you have bush women. My grandmothers were bush women, and my colored Dutchish, these people leaving evidence that we were here, much like the Bushmen do with their hands on the cave. Identity. We are migrants. We are all moving. The land is God's. We're just moving around with different names and different faces and different parents that all were all friends long ago and did business and trade. So it's interesting. Documentary is very historical, but when you use what you're researching to look into the future, you're like, whoa, this is, it's deep. I have to be committed to it. It's a commitment, documenting.
Well, I think I've spent a big chunk of the past 20 years working on quote-unquote documentaries. So it's really documentation for other people and not telling, my own story. And I remember that when I first thought, okay, let me try to go and do something, endow thing, I knew a big part of it would have to be training. So a transfer of skills from myself and other people.
Skills development for the youth.
Yes, yeah. So I remember talking to John Jagu, talking to, several people, what kind of equipment works for training, how can I structure this? I remember talking to Zo Mchena also, about just looking at how do you, without a lot of money, transfer what you have learned to people who have never worked in film before. And what I learned from that process was that, one, you have an advantage when you start off with a blank slate. So people who have not learned a little and they think they know a lot, because a lot of times it's a challenge to try to undo that. And so, you know, somebody who doesn't know how do you put the lens on, and you say, right, we're going to start from zero. This is what a camera is, and this is how it works. This is how you control the light that comes into the camera. And you do the same thing for the sound department and the same thing for wardrobe. And you, you know, we had 4 days of actual training with trainers. We had Derby Beta, and we had Yoka and Darimani, and myself and Wilfred Chichirao Siku. So it was 4 people who were trying to teach a whole community how to make films. And, you know, over 4 days, the initial training. So it was very, very intense. But after that, it was, and I think it's a model that can be used elsewhere, where for absolutely everything you do, you are asking, you have to ask, why am I doing this? Because a lot of times, somebody comes into the film community, they are ashamed to ask questions, they know there's the on switch, that's where you point the camera, but why? And people would not, you know, I've run into a lot of people who, you know, 15 years down the line, the guy who's sitting next to them does something that is very, very integral to what they do, but they don't know why. They just know, I don't know, I should go na blamos and those go mecha issues. I go mecha pap. And then the other major part of it was just giving people a chance. So there wasn't that competition of, oh, you know, I've got 10 years experience, I've got this and this and that. It was like, I'm interested in camera. So we're going to try and see if it works. I'm interested in writing, or just looking at somebody who doesn't know how to use a computer, and you say, but this is a storyteller. Let's work with this storyteller. Because the computer is not the tool to tell the story. And the cultural background that you have, and your sense of humor and your sense of drama, those are the things that you bring to the table. Yes, yeah. The computers can come in later. So, and another major part, I mean, I see a lot of people who write scripts and their English is not good. And then they try to force their bad English on actors whose English is not good. So, you know, if we're making a Ndao film, the way that we talk when we're having salsa, let's talk like that. If we're making a Ndebele film, let's talk like Ndebele. If we're making a Zezuru film, because I think when you look and you review a lot of content that is made locally, it is handicapped, it is hobbled by this crazy need to communicate in English. It's not our mother tongue, it's not our easiest mode of communication. So, and then I think the final thing for me was, you know, I'm looking at Ndao people today, and you know, I have the benefit of being Ndao, but looking at it from an outsider's point of view, because I'd been away for so long, and seeing what had changed, and seeing what had changed from an outsider's point of view. So certain things that I loved, like, you know, I'll give you an example. I drove through the Chirinda forest, and I remember it was a canopy. It was closed. It's got holes now, big holes. And you see these logging trucks passing by. And it's, you know, if you're born in 1980 or in the year 2000 and you're growing up, hey, it's normal. These are just trucks. For me, it's a very important natural resource that is dying. And taking all those different things that are being lost.
Have you got funding for saving the Chirinda forest? I saw it online, the crisis.
No, I don't have funding, but what I do have is a voice. So what I was able to bring to this story from Chipinge was I already had an audience, which I gained through being on television and whatnot. And to leverage that to build an audience, I always tell people, and I struggle, I'm really not a fan of acting. I like to direct and whatnot, but sometimes I will go in there because for whatever reason, people connected with characters that I played in the past. And if that helps to catapult something, I will use it. But generally, I feel like my time is best spent writing and sitting behind the camera. And I think going forward, trying to work better as a producer. There are people who are natural producers. I think, you take Nakai, you take Joe, you take different. There are people who just have that, let's go get the money. I want to write and, and direct and play with cameras. So I brought those tools and tried to tell a story that gave a different view of the Ndau today to a wider audience. So that was my mission, and hopefully long term I can build infrastructure that can carry that story forward to the point where there's somebody who has lived in Chipinge throughout, has been interested in film, and now they can just come up with a story, and the tools are there to put that story and together and bring it to a wider audience. So that's mine is it's much simpler.
Yeah. Sorry. Your what is simpler?
I think my my struggle is simpler in the sense that I have identified entertainment as a bridge between my minority community and the wider world. And then I think once those two meet, let them fight it out. But at least we're not invisible anymore.
Whereas they say the Bushmen are invisible. But if you go Arcadia, Braeside, Cranbourne, you might see a few catching a ride for 50 cents to DZ. I was thinking about our days on Studio 263. The whole nation was watching us. And I bet all the young ladies wanted to marry me, not you. But you might, I've gotten Ndau relatives. You're my ama. But I'm sure they're looking at me when I was arresting you. But Tom Bambo, the businessman, because John Huni was the connection, isn't it? But Steve Chigorimbo is the executive producer of a science fiction, action comedy, drama series, animation that we've been working on since COVID. When COVID-1 came and lockdown and all this masks and sanitize and all the things our grandmothers taught us already, social distance with a pitchy stick. That was social distance. Tamba panze. That was social distance. And this was the mask. No, our story as Zimbabwe is an international story. We're so mixed that the challenge to me as a Keda, an invisible bushman, a half-caste, a mulatto, a kitchen boy, a foreman, a Madumeni, a Jimmy, Jimmy, take him halfway. All that persecution on my mind and my soul couldn't make sense till my mother explained what a goffle is. A goffle is from the English word koffel, which means indentured slave. Means someone's got no choice but to just wash your feet. Because it's not your house and you don't pay rent and we gave you the food. It's in a captivity through a very domestic kind of violence. A very GB, gender-based violence issue kind of relationship, okay? And gender-based violence to women about their sexuality and reproductive rights. So you have these people who are officially invisible. My father's Chitupa has got 42, which is Rusape, because that's where my grandmother, Msakwa, Ambuya, Hungwe, Nyati, gave birth to my father with her colored husband, with foreign history. Everybody got foreign history. Guru Uswa, Tanzania, Nile Valley, North Africa, East Africa, West Africa, Southern Africa. The Bushmen were all designated as 00s and designated as aliens, as good as animals. For 20 shillings, for a head, you get 20 shillings. To kill one and bring the msoro wake, chituna, yuasia, ni mapere na magaba, kudziwa ni muka, musango. That was the extermination genocide that happened to the Aboriginal First Nations of Southern Africa. It's true. And it was swept away by the conquerors to say, no, no, they're just whining because they don't have fancy cows like ours. Our cows are bigger and our goats give more milk. So this hunter-gatherer and this builder, pastoralist, agricultural, industrial, the clash made them designated to the bottom. In Botswana, we are known as Basarwa. Kuti wasara, you in the kare mdara, ajite. Rova futi mdara dzidzi se, ari mwana mdiki. Ambuya, rova ambuya futi. That's the kind of oppression that drove coloreds, mixed race, Busuman, Khoi, into a collective consciousness. And we found ourselves with Google, with smartphones. When the technology came, there's Khoi Liberation Front in South Africa, millions of members in the Western Cape of people who were designated worst of the worst. At St. George's, they'd say, I'm white and he's black. We hate you, yellow, brown, sandman, 0.5, Busuman. Literally, my father's hair was twisted. When he came from Rusape to Harare, Salisbury, to Moffat Primary, which was the only government school for colored children, by law. Like if you go to this school, Nettleton, you get arrested. Or if you go to Sandhill, you get arrested. That's your school. Jail or school. An urban keep. You mentioned Harare earlier in our discussion. Do you know that Mukurisi River is where Indians would wash clothing for white town folk? This is like 1850. This is the documentary. Indians would wash the laundry, and coloreds were by Magaba, by Banjanji, to pick up soap if it floats down, if there's enough bubbles. You're hoping they're using Omo extra bright, not that other green. Is it Life Boy? It's Life Boy! You hear this way, hey, Boyki, there's Life Boy here! Grab it, run! And they used to say, get the soap before the, you know, the Obeye, Louisi, that bubble, the catfish, the, yeah, ram. Before, you know, it's gasipo. Sakataka manya kuti dzi. Then they to now nonga chigaba. It became known as Njimbo Yema Gaba Gaba, where the white townsfolk used to dump their rubbish. We grew up going through the rubbish, saying, Auntie, this is not a chidori dori, gollywog. They used to call us gollywogs, or children of, or relatives of gollywogs. Your grandmother's a gollywog. How can you say to someone, I'm wako e gollywog? Anyway, it was so painful by law and death until independence, and maybe 10 years after independence, when colored people became normal in any level of society from top to bottom, according to what you call the 21st century current, you know, YouTube, swipe and gone. It took 25 years to get divorced before these phones. Now it takes 25 images and one sound bite. And your wife just has to swipe and say, baba ningi uya pano. Ndiwe ere pa phone ndiri kuona pa WhatsApp. Ndini. Komota redu komkadzi uyu.
All right, so I think going towards that, I mean, taking that forward, the issue, I've done some work with, you know, Khoi-san, with Basarwa in Botswana, and also with Native Americans. And that challenge of having your history erased and being marginalized and being kept in what are effectively keeps in modern day America and in Botswana.
Reservations, in Canada, reservation,
Yes.
America, reservation, but in Zimbabwe, rural and Arcadia, keep. Arcadia was a keep,
Yeah.
marked by a central police station, Matapimbare, 2 stations, Braeside, full station with Air Force, Army, CID, every level, Braeside, to keep the colors in case they go to their African grandmothers to say, run away, the bad people are coming to kill you, Gogo.
So the way that some of these communities have worked around that issue is for the Native Americans, they just took a conscious decision that this child is bright. The community is going to support this child's education as a lawyer. And knowing that that child will be able to stand in court and defend the community. Because prior to that, they would just get these public defenders and whatnot, and it wouldn't work. In Botswana now, they had an exchange, a cultural exchange between the Native Americans and the yes. So, and what they saw was that the
Seeds, straight away, seeds, plants, environment.
but one of the big things was that the Bushman art was being taken
Yes.
and being sold in America.
Yes.
But the proceeds
Were
of
not
that art
coming back.
was going to, it was a big community, but all those proceeds were going to 16 people who were not Bushmen. They were church members of a church that owned the farm on which most of these people lived. So what they did during that cultural exchange, they identified young people who were promising. And they said, well, this one, we will help to fund his education at Lincoln Wing University, and this one will help them go for these workshops. So that exposure, yes,
The voice.
when they come back empowered with that voice. But a key part of that is documenting those processes so that they're not localized, but they can just go wider. So I think I took a leaf out of that book. So I did that process in 2007. But when I started thinking about doing this process, a lot of my thinking was informed by, seeing this process playing out in South Africa and Botswana and Swaziland and Lesotho. Just local communities, minority communities, getting a voice, one, through exposure, two, through exchange with others. So I think maybe that's something that you could use to...
My children used to watch Studio 263, and they told me, they said, no, Daddy, Tom Bambu's got money, but you're the man. So did the mom, my ex-wife. She also said, you're the man, but now she's my ex-wife. I'm doubting. Maybe I was only half the man to the kids. Half man to the kids, and other 50% yacho. So, yeah. So it's been fun knowing you and working with you all these years. And I'm now 52. I think you also 50.
Yeah, 52.
You're 52.
Yeah.
Same age boys, 1969, huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
68, but I have
68.
to say yes.
Oh, okay, me 69. So you're older than me.
Nachembera, Goma.
Mukoma. Yeah, Mukoma Tachembera. So let's put our memories and our years of documenting and research and knowledge into records that others can reference if they need a reference.
And if those records are in the form of entertainment, people are more likely to access them. That is my big argument. Hook them with entertainment, and the rest.
No, don't hook them. You know, I just did a play called Poison, Xenophobia. You know, xenophobia.
Yeah.
It's no, and the no is big. The no is big on the T-shirt. You know, no. Say no phobia.
I want one of those T-shirts.
Yeah. I'll give you one sign and all that and all that. So you can say to your kids, this is the good-looking guy that was on TV with me, and all the young ladies' hearts aflutter. Yeah. No, I knew he's such an excellent all-rounder, from writing to producing and acting, that the only way I could include him was by sex appeal. So when I arrested him, I just had to do it sexy. I walked in your office and I said, "Thank you, young lady, I like that yellow outfit." And you were like, you was taking out the script to see, but there's no such line. Then I say, "Tom Bambo, you're under arrest. I'm Detective Inspector Barry Green, Harare Central Investigations Homicide in connection with the disappearance of John Hooney of JH Construction." Then he said to me, "Iwe Mpulisa, unopoa 200 bond every month to come and distress a man like me." I thought the way the secretary was panicking that it's a big $1 million deal. Yes, you like smoking medicine. Here's some cigars from Havana. And he threw me a box across the room, across the camera flight. And the cameraman was set for it because we had rehearsed. He threw the box and I caught it and I said, "I think I'll buy my medicine 20 around the corner and support Ambuya and her kids. You..."
That's before people acknowledge that cigarettes kill. Huh?
No, my teeth have all fallen out, man. My teeth are finished. Now I talk like this. Almost like a Cape Colored, but still with some teeth. Like a goffle. Yeah, goffle means dung beetle. Young lady, a dung beetle lives on elephant dung. It lays her eggs, they grow, they eat, they turn into chiconias, then they turn into pupa, those pupais. Then they come out after some weeks, like with Wilma Papiro, and they start flying. We were called, as colored Bushman people, we were called dung beetles. They say you're born in shit, you live in shit, and you're going to probably die and be buried in shit. So these pains are in our documentary, but so is the comedy. If you say entertainment can bring it, I'll use stand-up comedy, barroom style, like Dave Chappelle, about xenophobia. Like this tall